All right, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. The reason for that delay, my friends, was I was setting the timer so it could remind myself to shut up because I get carried on here and I'm like, I don't want to keep talking
I did.
forever.
I didn't say that. Did I say
well, well,
that?
well done. My wonderful colleague and partner in arms in this whole odyssey to really save the freaking world. My friend Roseanne Rabiel Amelia and I are coming at you on this Truth Bomb Riff on Wednesday, August 27th at 2:30 my time, 1:30 Pacific. And I'm just going to let it riff. And Roseanne, I mean, look, a lot going on as always. Obviously, the tragedy today in Minneapolis. There was a couple of children that were murdered and at the Catholic school while they were praying. And I think as of yet, 14 were injured. I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know who the gunman was. I just was reading, on the ticker below on all the different, you know, mainstream media, cable reactionary sites at the gym, explaining that there were a bunch of teachers that were injured. I think there was three teachers that were injured. So anyway, I guess, and I'm going to say this kind of in a way that I hope doesn't really offend too many people, but hear me out on this. I'd like to offer my thoughts and prayers, but these children were praying when they were murdered. Okay, so there's that. And also, I've been listening to a lot of Mike Ness and Social Distortion, which was influential music as I was coming up in my teenage days, which is all about, kind of outlaw stuff and, many of the things that we talk about, Roseanne, in terms of kind of history preceding all of this era that we're in the midst of. And, just Mike tells it like it is, man. Life is crazy and foobar for those of you who understand that abbreviation. And, it's insane, but the entire world is insane. And as I was thinking about this, Roseanne, the first thing that I want to comment on is that, the decency sort of temperature gauge, whatever we might use to measure that in terms of the context of the whole. I think most Americans, quite frankly, tune out gun shootings at school. I mean, I think I've unfortunately turned down the volume in my mind since Uvalde because of the insane stories. And then you see the same thing over and over and over. The mainstream's going to react to it one way and nothing ever changes. Why? Because, of course, the gun lobby. You want to share your thoughts at the outset, given what I just laid out?
See, you know what though? People have tuned out so much unless it really hits them. They can tune out just about anything.
True.
You say to them, $71 trillion was handed over to fraudsters
Illegally.
illegally. They used what Hank Paulson, see, I remember him just walking out at the beginning of the Obama uh, administration. Like he's selling this, like, look at what we did. You can say 71 trillion. You can say school shootings. You can say this is what kills me. The 31st annual vigil for people who died in the streets of Clark County. The 31st annual vigil of people who died in the street. Okay. That that makes me like crazy. You can say almost anything. They either totally tune it out or they have some kind of fancy dancy opinion on it. Okay. Like, is Trump really trying to militarize the entire country? Hey, what do I know? He ain't coming to my house. He ain't. It's just those. It's just those black people in Chicago and Detroit, in the bad neighborhoods. That's what it is. Okay. I suppose to a certain degree, we all do some of that as an internal mechanism so that we don't go fucking crazy and lose our minds. Okay.
It's a coping mechanism.
It's a coping mechanism, but never before in the history of the world have we had this many people alive on the planet that's burning up. You can't, you say the planet's burning up, and I just had a conversation with an old friend of mine, plus he is old too. He's over 80.
I like that.
Okay, and he's talking about science and how he and I always talk politics because he's been in it forever, union guy. And he says he never talks about science with 99% of his friends because number one, they don't get it. Number two, they're not interested. So all these facts that he's telling me, I'm very interested in. And I tell him about a friend of mine who's a physics and astronomy professor, tenured professor at UNLV. He says, "Oh, let me introduce me to him." The only point I want to make about that is if you don't have an open mind, you can look at the Clean New Deal. You can hear about shootings. You can hear about criminals. You can hear that Trump's, he was convicted on 34 counts. Only 34. He had, six or seven bankruptcies. He had three wives. He has how many children? Um, you can hear anything and just go poof. You, I am so, and I got to use the word obsessed, okay? Because I'm scrolling through stuff today, and what pops up at me, they're talking about Trump. Of course, it's a Chicago newsletter, and it says, "Yeah, he's crooked as a Chicago alderman on steroids." Okay, now you have to be. I think you really appreciate it if you're from Chicago. Also, this friend of mine that I was talking to this morning, the one about science, he's not from Chicago. He's from a pretty well-to-do family. He spent lots of time working in Alaska, okay? And he's got a lot of money, okay? Got a lot of money. And he's smart and his mind is open. And we're talking about election fraud. And he goes, I can guarantee there wasn't any, there was no votes that were stolen. Said, okay. I said, do you know such and such a journalist? He goes, yeah, that guy's wacko. Okay. So he's like totally open to everything except this. And he is blue no matter who. And he starts with this thing. Well, sometimes you're faced with two bad choices. And I say, that's got to stop. That's all. I want to stop corruption. I want to stop having to make a choice between bad and worse. I want to stop all the terrible things, the lies, the stealing, the get out of jail free while people are sitting in jail. That's all I want. I don't want a whole lot. I just, and I bet you can get 90% of people to agree with me. But when I tell them the $71 trillion truth, when I tell them the Clean New Deal, duh, uh, a deer in the headlights, right? What's the problem? Human nature, stupidity, laziness, they're bought off. It's the algorithms. To me, those are all excuses. So what do? I keep talking. I keep talking to people. I keep talking to people. Personally, I keep talking to people. Talking, talking, talking. And I got some kids the other day interested in the Clean New Deal and
Okay, that's awesome. Can I interrupt you now? I'm so sorry.
let me just say why. Because I told them the story of Addie Polk. So all they got to do is watch episode 1. That's all they got to do. And then they'll get hooked in the con. End of story.
Okay, I love that. And coming from you, obviously, the Mighty Mouse from Chicago, with that sort of edict, right, to end evil and all of the different variables of it. And it's kind of cool because, I've got my shirt on the new Untouchables. Where did the Untouchables and Elliot Ness spawn from? Well, of course, going after organized crime and, one of the Italian, hierarchy of the mob, Mr. Al Capone, and that era and yada yada yada. And there's a lot that we could go into on that, but I really appreciate you really being frustrated with this notion, and this is kind of where we both are. But I'm not. I'm no longer frustrated. I'm not, because we've got the royal flush. Okay, when you've got the royal flush of truth, you don't care what people do, what they say, how they respond, what they are, because when you've got the truth, you're bulletproof. Now, what truth am I talking about? Is the truth, this ideological sort of universal construct? I talk to God, I got the tablets from on high in Mount Sinai, somehow I was able to walk on water, carry the cross, whatever other biblical sort of reference in the whole scheme of things. No, I started this particular conversation with my perspective, which a lot of influence, like for me, was Joe Strummer of The Clash, Mike Ness of, Social Distortion. I could go down the list. These guys are all outlaws, living their lives, trying to do the best they can and living their own truth. But at the same time, there was a truth of the reality that they had to navigate. And that's kind of what we're all about, right? So you could be praying in your school, in church one moment, and then some guy with 3 guns shows up and, kills you. And, we could all offer hopes and prayers, but that's not going to change anything, not in the real world. And, to your point, it's like, okay, well, what are some of the, let's say, priorities of the nature of the moment? Well, yeah, corruption. Okay, that's what we've got, is the royal flush of the revelations of truth that can destroy the ocean of madness and lies that we're all swimming in. And the nature of the markets, for example, and I'm going to say life in general, right, is a giant game. Now, in the United States, it's a game with consequences. There's no question about it. And what kind of game am I talking about? We all have to play a game. You're born, you get thrown in the world based on your circumstance. You have X amount of opportunities, education, this, that, and the other. You get a job, you do this, you start to figure out the 4 corners of your existence. And maybe you're looking around and you're starting to get some sort of, universal context. Maybe you're like, whoa, you know what? This is one planet in the middle of, hundreds of billions of planets in our own galaxy, which is part of 2 trillion galaxies that we know of in an infinite universe. So wait a second. Wow, maybe I'm not that important. But at the same time, it's no, you are important, because we all matter. All of our voices matter. All of our thoughts, our life matters. It's a gift, especially when you're thinking about in terms of, and I postulate this all the time, the scarcity of life that we know of, even though there's more people on this planet than ever before, more information, more disinformation. It's how you navigate the world, right? It's what's important to you. Like I've discovered on this recent journey, or this recent leg of this never ending odyssey, the truth really only has value to those who value the truth. And that's really the bottom line. So we've got to connect with more people who value the truth. And we know they're out there. They're just bombarded. They got other things going on. They got their lives. They got this, that, and the other. Okay. But until what? until a crazy assailant shows up at your door and you get caught in the crossfire. Or hey, better yet, maybe you're walking down the street and some masked, ICE agent who's 20 years old who thinks you're some sort of figure in a game that he grew up playing Call of Duty, and wrong place at wrong time, suddenly it matters to you. Oh, maybe you're like, I don't know, in the World Trade Center making deals with Saudi Arabia when suddenly a plane loaded with Saudi, terrorists rides up your fucking ass, for example, and then other things, right? And so we could go on with the analogies, but what people need to understand right now is the intersection of everything that's going on at the hierarchy of power that we have that leads to the Clean New Deal and what we're going to reveal to you now, every day, until the end of time, because that could be sooner than later. Unless, of course, those of us on the right side of the universe, the light, as it were, breaks through the darkness with the truth and builds this world that Roseanne talked about. What's wrong with I was reminded when you were saying that of Elvis Costello's, what's so funny about peace, loving, and understanding. And I used to think about that because, I'd always in my world rather hang out with artists, rather hang out with people who create beauty, people who go to, I don't know, events and we interact, and there's this, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's this, that, and the other, that, there's this connection, right? I love that. But I've never been naive. I've never been like peace for the sake of peace, because my North Star is anti-fascism. What happens if you sit on the sidelines and millions of people decide to look the other way while a small version of them are willing to throw a vast, number of people in, I don't know, gas chambers? And what that means all, this many years later, and the irony and the twistedness of mankind at potentially the end of the world. And I'll tell you, people, what is happening in the United States right now is what we've been talking about incessantly for 3 years on this YouTube channel. We've been trying to get your attention by any means necessary to bring you to the understanding that corruption burrs and fuels fascism, first and foremost. What is fascism? Okay, authoritarianism. What kind of degree are we talking about? Well, I guess it depends on how far it goes, right? It starts off as authoritarianism, might wind up into genocide. You don't know. There's genocide happening in places around the world that probably most of us wouldn't expect, but there it is. And there's many things that we could talk about ad nauseum about every single issue, especially with knowledgeable people and thoughtful people and everything else. But the one thing I think we can all agree on in the United States specifically is nothing gets done without A, power, and power behind the money, and the money behind maybe resources and manipulation and everything else. And so, one thing I was thinking about before I pressed record on this, because I just happened to be listening to the Maverick of Wall Street, who actually occupies Las Vegas as well. But as I was listening to his analysis of Jerome Powell and the Fed and what's been going on, particularly at the intersection of what I'm going to, go into and what I recorded a truth bomb yesterday that is getting a lot of attention, is that you listen to it, and if you're an investor, everything's a game. Now, those of us who really looked into the economy and the Federal Reserve, and we want to understand how it impacts the broader economy and people's, let's say, quality of life, so to speak, and what it all means, you have to learn a lot of different variables, right? We don't necessarily look at it as a game. We look at it as people's ability to thrive in sort of an ecosystem of which most of us think the United States was created to create a dynamic sort of liberty, a life where you can become the best version of yourself based on your education, based on how you play your cards, based on where you go and everything else. But as long as the ecosystem, the macro ecosystem, has rules, regulations, and the other, the best can actually find some really damn good solutions to a lot of problems, right? Now, the antithesis is true. If the bad have all the control and they're basically, feeding themselves, for example, from a fossil fuel palette, a dirty fuel palette, where they have leverage and monopoly predatory capitalism of things that you don't understand, that could lead to a game where all the so-called dials of the economy that those who actually understand macroeconomics, particularly at the Federal Reserve, can think to themselves, okay, in this situation, given this inflation or these job numbers or this money supply or this sort of report and the other, we can create stabilizers in the economy so that we don't have massive fluctuations. Now, what we're looking at, though, at the moment is the full scale, complete hostile takeover of this transactional billionaire class that has already destroyed the law. They destroyed the law based on the stuff that we show you in the con and happened long before we figured it out. But they've gotten massively complete control, including, of course, they've corrupted the Supreme Court. They've gotten all of Congress. They already purchased the media. I mean, I sound like, one of my favorite comedians. Why can't I think of his name? I can see his face. The American dream, because you got to be dreaming to believe it. Well, why can't I think of his name? It'll come back to me in a minute. I mean, everybody knows who I just referred to, and I can't believe I got stumped on that for a second, because this is how the mind works. When you're trying to make a point, sometimes things come in your mind and you can't remember names, and that's what I've learned as I foment these, descriptions of what we're in the midst of to try to bring people to the light. Okay, George Carlin. I was hoping you would say that right away, but let me finish this thought, and then I'm going to turn it over to you for the rest of this. So basically, it's a game for people that are inside the machine. They don't see the sort of consequences of the carnage that impact their bottom line. And the higher you go up the scale, a lot of times they really don't care about the consequences of what happens as a result of all of these sorts of manipulations within the system, both for bad intent, which could be criminality, or just stupidity. But in the case of Donald Trump and this billionaire class, they're obviously putting guns in the streets while taking away the law, whether it's habeas corpus or due process. They are literally going after minorities as a show of force to be able to remind everybody who's in control and why. And meanwhile, talking about the rule of law as if the guy who stole the position in the White House, who's been a criminal for 4 decades, who lied on 6 deferments to avoid service in Vietnam to serve, and who called people like John McCain, who served 6 years in the Hanoi Hilton, as losers. This guy elevates through theft when he was bankrupt 6 times and about to be bankrupt a seventh time. We know that he's actually, obfuscating pedophilia if he didn't actually participate in it in the Epstein situation. And the guy has stolen or backdoored against every constitutional precipice or principle that exists, somewhere in the neighborhood of north of $5 billion since the beginning of this hostile takeover. Why? How? What the serious FUCK is makes that all possible? Well, every single thing that we're telling you in the Clean New Deal that affects your life, whether or not you think it does or not. It doesn't matter where you fit on the food chain, but here's the sequence that you got to wrap your head around. And then this is kind of I think, the royal flush that we have to express every day until it finally sinks in. Okay? He's trying to take over the Federal Reserve. One of the things that the Joker in chief, i.e., Chumpenstein, the Chumpinator, whatever you want to call him, this guy is literally reaching over statutes that include the Federal Reserve Act, which is ironic, to be able to fire a black woman who's a Federal Reserve governor. And the claim is for mortgage fraud. And the mortgage fraud is coming from, the accusation, as we all know, lie, deny, switch the blame, and implicate as it relates. What do we say? Every abstraction is a projection or something like that with Trump, right? This guy's been involved with mortgage fraud for decades. It's his entire business model. The guy's been involved with falsification of business records for 4 decades that we have evidence of. And now he's also, in addition to a black Federal Reserve female board of governor, also, of course, going after former President Obama, because he's saying Obama set him up with falsification and forgeries to basically turn the tables and implicate him on Epstein. And then they're going to release whatever from the Epstein files that are going to obviously just be directed, of course, at the Democrats, who were also involved. But in addition to that, this whole case is going to go to the Supreme Court that actually gave Donald Trump the ability to be the immune president, whatever, what do they call it? Jesus Christ, help me out on the terminology on this one.
The
Not
unitary presidency, is that what you're talking
is
about?
it? What did you say?
The unitary
Yes,
press.
that's exactly right. So the unitary presidency, and
I
basically,
listen. I
yeah,
listen.
they elevate him above the law, right? So he's a king, which is antithetical to what? Several things, the American Revolution for starters. And then, of course, everything that took place that created the 14th Amendment, Section 3, which was the Civil War, which our Supreme Court, the corrupt support court that it is, that just sketched American history. And now this case to maintain Fed independence based on this switch the blame and implicate mortgage fraud accusation from the mother of all, mortgage fraud, who's been involved with Epstein and Putin through Deutsche Bank, levying money into subprime, which created the largest mortgage fraud in the history of the world. That, oh yeah, by the way, the Federal Reserve was at the apex of, and all of those who were supposedly those of prestige and credibility now are saying, oh yeah, no, the reason why the Fed has to be independent, which of course we know it's supposed to be mandated by Congress and controlled by
Congress.
Congress, but what it's supposed to have this independence because it would maintain, its professionalism and its lack or inability to become corrupt. And instead, what we know, because of what we've revealed to you that have impacted 30 to 150 million people directly, which was the 2008 great financial crisis, emanated from the fraud and the theft and the illegal behavior of the Federal Reserve that basically, and we have all of this evidence, enabled the largest racketeering enterprise in history to happen that emanated from the then Fed Reserve Chairman, Alan Greenspan, who got away with the freaking crime of the millennium. And then ultimately, we gave tens of trillions of dollars illegally to the people that created this and executed it through our courts, which enabled the likes of Trump, Putin, and all of the rest of the criminals to go, oh, you mean there's no more law? Wow, I've got an idea. And here we are. So take it away, sister.
And to me, it's always been since I saw the con, since I started working with you, since I went through with you 650 truth bombs, 19 episodes of the new Untouchables, and just all the different people that I've met who give the evidence. These people aren't making up stories out of their butt, okay? They're not doing that. This is, these are real people, people of integrity, people who have a lot of courage. And sometimes I think if you have the courage, you're not a wimpy Cash Patel, Pam Bondi. All these people to me are very weak. They have no courage. They bow. They are butt kissers, and God knows he's got a big enough area to, you know, get to. They do that not only to curry favor, but they have no heart, they have no soul. The truth is what it is today and what it can be tomorrow and maybe the next day. And we are in a special place of privilege. They are, you know how I call the big boys, I call people want to be the big cheese. I don't know what they get from that. I really don't know. I understand if people get money.
Let me offer this. They get what George Carlin said as a ticket to the club that you and I aren't in.
Okay. And how many parties have you been to where these are supposed to be important people? You go there, you don't want to be there. What do you want to talk to them for? Who are they? Okay. They don't
There are
have,
people that have got teenagers in the back room that they're raping, and that's what they want you to do too, so they can get you on camera.
okay. They don't. to me, the more I talk to people, the more it seems to me that even if they got foreclosed upon, because God knows I've seen lots of people who got foreclosed upon, and are they flocking to us? We have the answers. We can tell them how to fix things. They don't flock to us, right?
Because they're stupid. They're the
Oh,
ones who got set up. Let me just tell you straight, America. When you are those types of people, they set you up like P. Diddy setting up somebody who wants to become a starlet, and then he gives you a roofie, and then they rape and pillage you in a gang rape or a train, as they like to call it, in a freak off. That's exactly what they do. They look for suckers. They look for weak people that they put money on a like a rat trap, right? Or the Roach Motel. That's what they think of you. When you're stupid, they're going to freaking rape and exploit you every single time they can. That's why it is incredibly important to, one, be aware, to be forthright, be somebody who understands principles, but at the same time, listen to people when they're telling you you're getting set up. Listen to people who understand that you will continue to live in misery. And if that's your choice, okay. But the rest of us, don't go that way. You don't want to be in the Jonestown massacre. You don't want to be sent on a train to freaking Auschwitz. You don't want to be in a direct line of, the whole thing feels to me like sometimes, the Naked Gun presidency, but with actual consequences that are going to destroy everyone, including, and this is, I was just thinking about this the other day because I've done a lot of research, and I've read, and I've studied over the years and decades. It was the industrialists that got behind Hitler because they thought he would take out the communists, and they all ended up going the same way as everybody else. Nobody is safe from overreach of authoritarian. And to allow you to do this in the United States, you're insane. And worse than that, you're somebody that you're not a part of this, nor will you ever be. What we need are people that believe in truth, justice, liberty, and the integrity of the law, because we know that if your actions aren't aligned with your principles, you're in
right.
disarray. It's that simple.
And you have no courage and you are afraid of everything. You can't be afraid. Look, I was never an FDR fan. I was always a fan of his wife. And I always thought Franklin should have listened to Eleanor, and our country would have been much further ahead. Okay. But when he said, and he would talk on the radio, and he had millions of Americans mesmerized, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself. What is fear? What can they do to me? They take away my house, my car, whatever. Okay, so I am who I am. I'm going to say what I know to be true. I'm going to not simply say it because somebody else parroted something. You have to take education and you have to take your experience. How many people, here, this just came into my head. How many people they watch all these soap operas and they have all these people who are like liars, but in the end, they get caught. Everybody gets caught. In the scenario we have, they're not getting caught. They're not paying for anything. They have their get out of jail free card. They know that they're going to get as much money as they need, no matter what they do. what if all that $71 trillion went to all the people who were foreclosed upon, who lost their pensions? What if the federal government made the people whole? Why did they just choose the big banks?
Because that'd be called socialism, but what people don't understand is it's socialism for the criminal class, and that's what we prefer. I mean, that would prefer. That's what some prefer, the 1,001%. That's what we profess. That's what we show. That's the entirety of the whole thing. Like a society, a democracy in a I don't know, in a modern day society, I don't know what the word is I'm trying to think of, but you can't, it doesn't exist without the law, or at least the equal application of the law. What we all know is that there's different sets of laws, those for the people who have everything that are above the law, and for the rest of us. Okay, so can you see my screen?
I certainly can.
Walk us through it.
Oh, okay. Well, we talk about the Clean New Deal. What is the Clean New Deal? We have this, let's call it a Rubik's Cube, and the first we have four questions, and we say, what is qualified immunity? If you see the police, ICE, any kind of law enforcement, they break down your door, they shoot you, they kill you, they Rodney King you, okay? And oh, well, you're above the law. You can get away with this because of qualified immunity, because you're acting in your enforcement capacity. Well, what if it doesn't work that way?
If everybody is equal under the law, but the cops can shoot to kill and not be held accountable, are they equal under the law?
They're above the law.
Okay, so what's the next?
The
What's number?
next one is let's talk about what's judicial immunity. The Supreme Court, because of the majority that they have today, that has been bought and paid for over the years, who's going to prosecute them? Anybody prosecute them? No, nothing happens to them. They're the final word. They can change law on a whim.
They can erase the American Revolution and the Civil War outcome. They can do that. They did that.
They've done it.
Who's going to stop them? Okay, what's the next step? What about presidential
Next
immunity?
one is what's presidential immunity? Okay. The Supreme Court went and said, yeah, the president can do what needs to be done. No, he cannot do what needs to be done. He needs to be held
Yeah,
accountable.
I'm not sure if that's the best way to describe it. What they're saying is that as the elected leader of the American people, as the unitary executive, he can make decisions that make him immune to specific legal outcomes, which of course makes him a king. People, if you don't know that we had a revolution against King George III, you really shouldn't actually be an American.
Well,
don't know
look,
what I don't know what happened. All right, so what's the fourth part?
and the fourth one is what's the Electoral College? The Electoral College makes California people, their votes, not as important as someone in a small state like Wyoming that has X number of electoral votes, but those people who are the electors have more juice. Okay.
It means that you can actually manipulate the outcome of the majority for the minority, which is a perversion of power, which is again Not
Who's
everybody's equal under the law. We don't have equal power and equal representation. It's all a facade. And most of you know that, but we're showing you exactly how it is. Okay, so great. So then, what are the precepts of the Clean New Deal that pull us out of it?
the precepts are the first thing we need to do is we need to recreate a modern day Glass-Steagall. We have to separate commercial banking from investment banking while ensuring that the full faith and credit of the United States can't be used to guarantee global financial fraud.
And
And
racketeering. Why is Donald Trump trying to hijack the Federal Reserve?
he has,
He's a criminal. He's trying to loot the goddamn fucking full faith and credit of the United States for himself. What has he done? He's already 5 billion north since he stole the election. What do you think he's going to do if he has the power of the full faith and credit of the United States for himself?
see, but this is the other crazy thing. Donald Trump understands that the Federal Reserve is bailing out the bad guys. He wants to be a bad guy. He wants to be a made guy. He'll never be a made guy because he's got too big a mouth and they'd whack him. And so,
If he has the Federal Reserve, he's a made guy. He is the ultimate made guy. That's what we're in the midst of,
well,
people.
of course,
They're hijacking the Federal Reserve as they've hijacked SCOTUS, as they already hijacked the Department of Justice and the FBI and the SEC and everything else that holds power to account, which creates tyranny. Again, reminding you that we had a revolution against King George III, and you saw in the previous picture that Donald Trump's the fat emperor's new clothes on really bad acid. So, what's number two in the precepts of the
number
Clean New
two
Deal?
is, and I think everybody will agree with that. We got to end Citizens United. All it is legalized corruption for all the dark money, all the shadow banks. That's got to stop.
And they buy the politicians that create the laws so that they can do stuff like have ICE out in the streets where they give them the budget of most militaries in the entire world to do what? Basically, be a strong armed paramilitary force until it gets even worse. Okay, so what's the third precept?
Third one, we can show you how $71 trillion was looted illegally by the financial system that makes nothing. It betrayed our institutions. It propped up the billionaires and all their little Italian ninare.
If you're aware of the climate crisis and you know that the world is spinning out of control with this, attack on renewable energy and everything that's happening with this fossil fuel presidency because of everything that is elicited within the corruption, do you find yourself at a conundrum right now going, where are we going to find the money?
See, Trump knows it. Trump's known about,
Where are we going to find the money, Roseanne? They stole $71 trillion illegally and they gave it to approximately 300,000 people to create this madness we're in. Where are we going to find the money, Roseanne?
we create the currency. We are the issuer of the currency.
Is money a problem?
Money is not a
Then
problem.
what is the problem?
The problem is you have to have enough resources over here. The
That's
production,
true, but the corruption is the problem. We created
of
MMT for
course,
criminals.
of
Okay.
course,
It's what you've said from the very beginning. It's corruption. Okay, so what's number four through seven?
we have to expand SCOTUS to 13 justices and enforce a canon of ethics to make these corrupt perpetrators accountable to the law. If they did a felony, put their ass in jail. Okay? We got to end qualified immunity for the police in these law enforcement. This ain't the Wild West. And even the Wild West had, Marshall Dillon, and some good guys. You got to end presidential immunity. Nixon was a crook. He could say it all day. He was a crook. He shouldn't have been pardoned. Trump shouldn't have been on the ballot,
No kings.
right? Got to stop it. We got to end the electoral college. It is not fair. We need to have
It's a perversion.
we need to have one person and one vote. And not because I got more money than you have, I get to say more. No, 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 no. We have to have term limits for all the US senators and
Right,
representatives.
because if
Look,
someone serves forever and they figure out how to do that, they become entrenched for whom? The people that put them there and keep them there, right?
of
That's not
course, that's all
that's
they
not
do. That's
that's
all
not the
they
way the system should be. Go ahead.
And then we have to prohibit all kinds of any kind of insider trading for all the members of the Senate, the House, the Supreme Court, the administration, and cabinet members.
Okay,
Look,
so how are we going to do that considering we know that J.D. Pritzker and Gavin Newsom and Hochul, are trying to battle, fire with fire by way of the gerrymandering of Texas and everything that that's going to lead to. And we're really hyper focused on that. But are the Democrats a party that are going to be able to institute this war on kleptocracy, so to speak, that we're entertaining?
I've been telling all the young people I know who are running for office, look, here are the precepts of the Clean New Deal. This is what you can look to whether you're running, and they're all running for state
For
offices. Oh,
guidance of what the problem is it not? Are we not identifying actually what the problems are? Because what the Democratic Party, who work for other billionaires that are obfuscating for the kleptocracy themselves, they're not a challenge to the thing that created Trump. The billionaires writ large and tax law and what we're talking about with Federal Reserve Act 13.3 and all the rest of it, they stood on the sidelines. They watched the country completely fail. They allowed the Department of Justice to allow Wall Street to get away with the largest criminal conspiracy in the history of the world. Why? Because they
and
got paid. They got
it's,
paid a lot of money. They got more control. Are they interested in less control and less money?
of course not.
No,
They,
they're not. So they're not going to be fixing the problem. Tens of millions of you equipped with the truth to become a big bang of truth to force the light into the darkness of this depravity is the only way this is going to happen. So, what are we going to do? What must we do?
I educate everybody
But look
all.
here, what are we going to do?
Well, what it says here is if you think we're going to have free and fair elections again, well, I don't know. After we saw the January 6th insurrection, just
What about what we're seeing every single day?
every day.
This is way beyond what we saw from January 6th. It's just an extension of them being like, that's it. We've got complete control. They're saying to us, you're not going to do anything about it. That's what they're saying. And we're saying, what are we going to do? You always
Oh,
said, if you're not willing to like give it all up, then forget about it. There's no way. We're at that point now. We're not warning people anymore that corruption is going to create fascism or
here,
authoritarianism. It
here.
has. And now what happens is that they pick off people or millions of people die one way or the other, whether it's US aid and not being able to get medicine, to the millions of people to prevent AIDS in Africa because of all of the other things that are involved. Millions of people are going to die as a result of that, let alone what's going to happen in this country if we become this, version of Russia, which we've seen since, obviously, Putin took over Russia in 99, right? A lot of people die all the time in environments like that, and a lot more are going to die. So, what are we going to do? If we look down to where we are, I think I just skipped past it, but I show Martin Luther King and Abraham Lincoln. Why do we show those in the Clean New Deal?
Well, look, we're already doing the the protesting. We have to protest with a plan. And you laid out a plan. It's only 15 minutes at for in Utah to several thousand people. We have to descend upon Washington as Martin Luther King did with the Million Man March. We have to be, I would,
What did
I'm
we
not,
call for a year ago that's in this text? We called for the American people to surround the corruption so that we can break through the media ignorance of it to show that we, tired of them pissing on our heads telling us it's rain. How are we going to do that?
Let's all get together. We have to educate people
We're going
first.
to surround the corrupt institutions in Washington, D.C. What are they?
Well, the Fed, and I know how to get, you got to get two permits over there. We
I
can
don't
do,
think they're going to give us permits now, but what we're saying is we've got to have a smash mob of a million plus people in Washington, D.C. to surround SCOTUS, to surround the corrupt SCOTUS, to surround the Fed, the corrupt Fed, to surround Congress, to surround, the White House, to surround the DOJ and FBI. And, given what we've seen with the National Guard and so on and so forth, do we think that millions of people will show up for this?
I,
Why or why not?
if we keep the pressure up, okay, and I think if they go into Chicago, they're gonna have a rough time. And
Sure, but we don't know what the American people are going to do. What we've seen from the American people so forth is all they have to do is just look at the next thing on their feed and they don't have to worry about the problems anymore. Everybody can escape. We're looking for people that don't want to escape. We're looking for people that want to face reality with the truth to be able to become a nuclear reaction vector of the Clean New Deal and everything that we've laid out. Because people, if you don't understand that money is our God in this country and money is what creates organization in society, do we need a society for humanity to survive? Yeah, we do. How do we organize in society? Money. Is money everything? No, you've got philosophy and this, that, and the other. And some people choose to live on communes and yada, yada, yada. But society writ large is organized vis a vis money. Why is money so important? Who's getting it? How are they getting it? What is the law? What is the history of the United States? Why is there a United States? You've got to ask yourself all of these questions and you've got to resolve that for yourself.
I think most people don't have priorities, okay? They're into this. I'm okay. I don't want to talk about politics. I don't want to talk about
It
religion.
doesn't matter. They're not holding the royal flush of truth. Who is?
We are.
We are. Does it matter what cards they're holding?
I don't care what they have.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We've got the royal flush of truth. Now, it's just whether or not it's a numbers game. It's going to be whether 3.5% of us, which is what, of 350 million people. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I can tell you it's not 30 million people, right? So the bottom line is it doesn't take all of us to be able to
No.
make this thing work, not even remotely. But it makes enough of us to be able to be like, are you kidding me? And the way I'm thinking about most people in the United States is if they understood that we've been giving billionaires free money for the last 13 years illegally to create this world that they live in, unless they're feeding from it and all of their assets are through the roof and yada, 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 they should be like, you got to be kidding me. I'm
And
working 2 to 3 jobs. I can't afford a place to eat. My kids are starving. I can't get ahead. Nothing like that. I mean, and people will be like, well, wait a second, maybe I'm not trying hard enough. Oh, wait, I'm not really about socialism. I believe in the free markets and everything else. Guys, there are no free markets. This is monopolization of predatory ism, and I don't even want to call it capitalism because capitalism is risk reward. This wasn't risk reward. This was a sure thing, is what we're telling you. It's a stacked deck. You got set up. You got raped and roofied and gang raped. And if that's the way you want to live your life, go right ahead. That's not the life I live. That's not the life I'll ever accept. I'm an American. I
I,
like outlaws to a certain degree. I like people who press against, the bad guys. But I like people with courage and I like people with commitment and I like people that have a vision and can actually get things done. And I like people who compete. That's what we have to do to be able to press this over the goal line because Roseanne and I have the royal flush of truth. That's
I
it.
like people who do what they say, okay? Because words are, they can change in a heartbeat. I want to see the proof. I want them to put their money where their mouth is. So here we are in this
How
crazy.
many people have you saved by way of, I don't know about saved, but how many people do you feed that have been in the streets for however long?
Oh gosh. I look, there was a time uh for at least 5 years, I was probably feeding 1,000 people a month.
1,000 people a month. So when you say, for example, that you want to see people put you want to prove it. I mean, this is coming from a construct of a woman who actually proves it every single day of your existence. You're somebody who is always committed. You've always been committed to truth. You never back down from evil, and you always do your very best to triage people in need. That's just the way you are. I've always compared you to, of course, Mother Teresa and any
Yeah,
number of
I,
other wonderful female characters in human history that give it all for the soul of humanity. That's what you do. Whether or not, I mean, you're very, very humble, but you do it. But here we are. What does the $71 trillion truth mean to you, Roseanne?
it means that the law is equal, that if a financial fraudster is stealing pension money and foreclosing illegally because white collar crime kills, they will go to jail. If they screw around with people's, if they have deceptive acts and practices to screw people out of their homes, they will go to jail. I don't want to see any fines. Okay. I want them punished. I don't want them in a club fed. All right. I want them punished. I want fossil fuel to stop killing the planet. I want people to have homes. I want the money that went to the criminals making all the people who lost their pensions and their homes, make them whole. If you make them whole, you won't have a bazillion people out on the street. If people are out on the street, you you gain their trust. This whole thing is about feelings, it's about trust, and I'm telling you, we're holding the cards. We're holding the cards. Okay, Trump. Okay, administration. Okay, all you politicians who get paid off. We call. We call. What are you
Well,
going to do?
I think that's great.
Open
Look,
your hand.
I hear everything that you've said, and I'll tell you what the $71 trillion truth means to me. They've been pissing on your head telling you it's rain because you're a weak, ignorant coward. You're stupid. You
Yeah.
accept being railroaded. That's cool with you. You'd rather, punch sideways or down like most of MAGA, because MAGA obviously doesn't have a freaking clue how anything works. They don't even know what the law is. They don't even know what the history of the country is supposed to be, nor can they differentiate, who Trump is in context to Jesus, quite frankly, or at least the ideas of either. That's how ridiculous and absurd this whole thing is. So look, we've got the full scope of the truth. We'll take on anybody. We'll take on any PhD level economist. We'll take on the most I don't know, glorified Ivy League attorney, and we'll call your bluff because we've got all the evidence.
Right.
None of this is poof out of thin air. None of this is hyperbole. None of this is some. This took years and tens of thousands of hours in sacrifice beyond your wildest comprehension and millions of dollars. But guess what? The guys who quashed us, they got $71 trillion.
They got the money. We
So
got the
so
shaft.
so Elon Musk is worth north of $400 billion. He's richer than the richest pharaoh in the history of the world because of what we're telling you. But a billion is 1/1000th of a trillion, and we're standing here with the $71 trillion revelation. I don't know what it's going to take, but it doesn't matter because we've got the royal flush of truth, and that's going to win because the royal flush always wins, whether or not we're here or not. Go ahead.
That's absolutely right. You can't be afraid. You got to open your mouth. Silence is not golden. in this case. You got to open your mouth. You can't be afraid.
Don't
Open,
be a coward.
don't be,
Don't be weak. Don't, because if you are, you will suffer even more than you have. And it doesn't matter where you are in the food chain. It really doesn't. We're all in
I
this
don't,
together. Everybody has something to offer. Listen, we are here to field questions. We're here to walk you through it. We're here to do everything we are. And yeah, if I sounded a little enthusiastic, it's because I am. Because enthusiasm is the nostril breath of God. I feel like we have been touched by the larger universal forces because, again, that is the universal truth that light overcomes darkness with the
right.
power of the supernova. It takes energy to force light into darkness. That's what you're doing when you have the truth. Thank you, Roseanne. Go ahead. You've got something.
I just wanted to say I get energy from learning. I also get so much from the people that I share with. They give to me more than a simple meal that I can give to them. They give me their thanks. Oh, thank you for coming. They're sincere. They're not bullshitting. They know I'm going to be there on that day all the time. They know
We know there's tens of millions of Americans that would jump on board here in a nanosecond if they could just get their heads around it. And it's tough, but that comes from all of you. That's why you become a nuclear action reactor. You got to like, subscribe, and share. You got to get on board. We're not asking you for anything else but your unity in saving yourself because it's
don't
going to
be
take all of us.
afraid.
And that's it. All right. Hey, we're pushing up this boulder. Again, we used to use this analogy all the time. We call this the righteous grind. Okay. And you got to think of it as we're walking up Mount Everest backwards, pushing a 10-ton boulder, and we're doing it by ourselves. But here's the trick: millions of us gather, that weight doesn't feel so heavy anymore. And when you push it up over the side of the peak and it goes down the other side, it becomes the biggest wrecking ball in history of the corruption that's just waiting to be wiped out. That's right. All right, my friend. Thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for all tuning in. Again, please like, subscribe, and share. Onwards and upwards. Take care.